Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 presented by Stakes. And unfortunately, we have a topic we didn't want to discuss this morning, but Mike Leach has passed. He, of course, was Mississippi State's head football coach. He had had success also at Washington State and Texas Tech. Blake, I think we had known this was coming from about late Sunday afternoon. Mike Leach was airlifted, I think to Jackson Memorial Hospital after being taken to the hospital locally in Starkville. I believe had a heart attack and passed. Really didn't look to be in good health most of the year. Just awful news. It's tough anytime anyone passes. I think it's especially tough in an athletics community when it's a beloved coach, and doubly tough when it's one who's active. Mike Leach has passed at the age of 61, and just a horrible day for he and his family, for the Mississippi State community, for those in college football and other circles who loved him. And our thoughts and prayers and condolences go out to Mike Leach's family and to the entire Mississippi State community and to anyone who was touched by Mike Leach.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's this isn't something we prepare for. We never go into, it's like, well, what are we going to talk about? Like we find stuff to talk about with news and games and all that stuff. It's like you never sort of envision this being a topic you're ever going to have to discuss. And like you said, it's just I just still don't really know how to even form kind of thoughts on it, because it's like, I mean, this is an active SEC football head coach, and it's like, I mean, it's just I still don't know how to even form that this is an actual reality. But like you said, I mean, he's someone that, look, I mean, the reach he had was just unbelievable. Obviously, there will be a lot of people that kind of talk about just his impact on the game itself with the air raid and just the creativity and the innovation and all those things that he brought to it. But I think it was, you go beyond just the football aspect. And like, I think the best way to say is, like, Mike Leach was, like, he was Mike Leach. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that, I put the quote up. I think it's I don't know, it's an Emerson quote or something about, the, what was it, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest
Yeah.
accomplishment. And it's
I
like,
like that.
I mean, that to me, like, that was him. Is like, this guy was never not himself. Like, he was always
Yeah.
himself. And I think that's what made him such a unique figure. And really, I think it's also what just probably made him so, beloved by so many people, is just because he was not someone that, you ever met or talked to and be like, oh, that guy's just, he's being that guy. Like, he's just kind of, he's being the role of football coach, or he's being the role of this or that. Like, he was just himself in every single aspect, whether it was, coaching his players, talking to the media outside of football. Like, it's just that was it. And so, I think it's just all those things combined. And like you said too, it's just like, he was 61. Like, that's
That's not
not,
old.
no. And it's just, yeah, I mean, there's so many things we could say. And it's, look, we don't, again, this is one of those videos where it's like, you just never think you're going to do one of these. And it's not like we have some kind of prepared, thoughts, or it's just, we're just kind of, reacting as everyone else is. But there's so many different things you probably don't even think of right now that'll come to us. But all in all, it's just a tragic loss. So
He's such a unique guy. I mean, he's got a law degree from Pepperdine. I think I'd have to go back and look at this. He got into coaching, I think, later. I don't think he had a background in it. He just figured it out. I mean, he's a very bright, and I mean, like, you can't even compare Mike Leach to anybody else in terms of how he went about his business. You and I don't know how many press conferences or coaching interviews we've been in between the two of us. It's a 4-figure number. And I never met Mike Leach, and Mike Leach wasn't perfect. There were criticisms of him, and I'm sure some of those were fair, but none of us have lived a perfect life, and you could say that of any of us. But I think as college sports has gotten more big time, and you even see this in baseball, where it used to be a lot more casual, everything is getting a corporate feel to it, and especially college football, which has been that way for a while. To see a guy who approached his business with the attitude that he did, he never took himself that seriously. I mean, sometimes it got a little bit old. You wanted journalists to ask him stuff about football other than Halloween candy. But I think as Mike Leach's career went on and dealt with more coaches that took themselves too seriously and programs that took themselves too seriously, I really appreciated the way Mike Leach went about that in terms of not being that guy. And I think in some ways that makes your job, I'm not going to say makes a journalist's job easier. That's not what I'm trying to get to. But when you have that casual back and forth where you can throw some humor into it, sometimes I do think that makes it a little bit easier on everybody, just to get information and get to know a coach and to understand where everybody's coming from, if that makes sense.
No, it does, and I mean, we always use the phrase "coach speak." I guess you kind of know where that's coming from and who's going to give you the coach speak responses, and I like you said, it's understandable. I think in a lot of instances because coaches aren't most coaches aren't just going to flat out come out and say what they're thinking in every single moment. But like that was, I mean, like you said, it can make your job more difficult when you do that, but again, I think it goes back to like he was uniquely himself, and um, it never, no matter the situation, like you knew you were always getting his honest assessment of what he thought of it, and I think that is like, I mean, to me, that was nice to have. Like you said, in a land where I think everything has just gotten so, you're I don't know, it's like you're almost any one word here or there can completely change how
Yeah.
something's taken, and you say the wrong word in the wrong spot in the sentence, and it's just like everything can kind of change the reaction to it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was just, like you said, everybody, I'm sure the local people that covered him, at Mississippi State, at Washington State, Texas Tech, and so forth. And obviously, we can't forget he was at Kentucky as a late
Yeah.
'90s as the was it OC and QB coach there.
Al
Um,
Mummy's staff, I think.
yeah, I think that was right. And so yeah, I mean that's there's just so many different aspects that you think about just of his again, and look, there's so many things we don't know about Mike Leach because we didn't know him personally, and I'm sure there's, like I said, there'll be so many stories that'll come out that I'm sure will make you laugh, will make you cry, and all those things, just because I can only imagine, what even half of those stories are like, just being close to him, as someone who was. I'm sure again we'll hear a lot of those in the coming days and weeks, I'm sure. But just from a people who cover the SEC standpoint, I mean, he was someone that you knew exactly what you were getting, you know exactly where he stood, and I do think there was something to that, just in terms of, like I said, it's just he was never not Mike Leach, and I think
Yeah.
that was a very valuable thing. So
The way that you phrased some things there, I think made it easier to get in my head what it is I wanted to say about him. This is a world we live in where one word or phrase misspoken, even if it was 100% well intentioned. We're in a world now where it is appearances and it is people take offense at anything and everything. And it doesn't really matter what intent was anymore. To see Mike Leach make it work the way he did and to speak so candidly about so many things off the cuff was really remarkable. I don't know I mean, things change. Who knows? 10, 20 years, maybe living in a different time where things have changed back to another way. But it really was remarkable. He was able to pull off being Mike Leach to the extent that he did. And I don't know. I mean, look, I don't know that you see a Mike Leach anywhere, anytime, anyway. But Mike Leach in 2022, being able to be Mike Leach and be so loved and entertaining, I just don't know that we're going to see anything like that again soon.
Yeah, that's what made him so unique. I think, like you said, it's sort of it is. This is like a different it's a different time period, and I think there's a lot of stuff out there that's done for likes or shares or
Yeah,
you be
that's a
someone
good way to put it.
I mean, that's the thing is like you become someone you're not because you're trying to do something because you see that it may get a lot of likes or it may get a lot, but I mean that's the social media age that we live in, right? And it's like and I know he was on Twitter and stuff, and there was always some funny stuff that would come through there. And but again, like he was just it was never one of those where like, oh, he did that because he knew that it would get this many likes or shares or
Yeah,
whatever. And it's like he just
I
did
think
that
it's called
because it was
virtue
him.
signaling. Yeah,
Well, and it's like he just did that because it was him, right? Like it was just kind
right.
of that's who he was. And I do I just think that was that was a refreshing type thing just to just for someone like that, like, and I know I keep going back to the same thing, but like just for someone like that to be himself. And I think we're all probably guilty of that sometimes. Is and again, it's no matter what profession you're in or whatever, but it's just like there is that, okay, well, I'm going to look outside my bubble and see that, this person is maybe, doing this, or boy, they seem to have it all together. And
Yeah,
because of all these pictures on social media and everything and or whatever, and I know this is kind of a deeper discussion, but it's like it's just I don't know, like I think there's something to the fact that, if and there's a lot of things you can take away from it, but it's just like sometimes it's like, you know what, it's just okay to to be you because he was just such a unique guy. And again, I just think that there are so many, and there's so many stories already out there that people are sharing and such. And um, here's one, and I know we'll wrap it up in a second, but it's like Ross Dellinger shared a quote that he had. I think we did Leach did an E60 segment in 2019 with Jeremy Schaap, and Schaap asked him how he'd like to be remembered in his obituary. And his response was, well, that's their problem. What do I care? I'm dead. And it's like, I just thought that was quite a lot. He's like, well, that's their problem. What do I care?
uh,
I'm dead. So, again, there's going to be so many quotes like that. You look
mm,
back on it, just like, man, that's what made Mike Leach. And he never held back in terms of what he think. He was true to himself. And yeah, just stuff like that. Like I said, it's boy, there's so many of those out there that like I said, I mean, you'll be able to find them, I'm sure, anywhere you look. But boy, just so many things like that. So
Mike Leach never coached at anything resembling a perennial top 25 power. I mean, when he was at Kentucky
yeah,
had
it's
been
true.
kind of bad for a while. He and Hal Mummy got that turned around, and they were exciting. I think he was there for Tim Couch. He coached at Mississippi State last, of course, and not that State hasn't had its moments and won some games, but it's typically been a lower half of the SEC program. Probably you could argue the toughest job outside of A&E in this league because of location and lots of things, and also splitting a state with Ole Miss. Uh, he won at Texas Tech. He had Texas Tech number one in the country. What was it? Late in 2008. He was national coach of the year that year. I think he won at Washington State. I mean, being able to win consistently. Now, it might not happen immediately. I think at State they weren't very good his first year, but he consistently had teams in that 7, 8, 9 win range at places where they didn't always win. and I don't know if Mike Leach will be a Hall of Famer, but I always argued that that category of coach is the one that gets most underrated. And I think Mike Leach's ability to win at a lot of places that A, we're not used to winning, and B, geographically, we're in spots that were not advantageous to recruiting, and C, we're in tough conferences, is a real testament to how good he was. And I think, again, the way you win at places like that is kind of being outside of a box thinker, maybe not caring what everybody else thinks, maybe not being an establishment football guy. And again, because of his background, he wasn't. And it just is such a cool picture because, again, that's another place where he kind of broke the mold, not just the funny stuff and how he went about his job, but how he coached and where he was able to have success at the places where he had it.
Yeah, I mean, like, and we'll say this about a lot of people, but like, you think about how much the nature of coaching has changed since he started, right? Like, I mean, he's someone that started in the late '80s, and you just think about all the changes, like whether it's, now it's been NIL, whether it's just the landscape of recruiting, having to do as much social media
Yeah.
when it comes to recruiting, all the different things. Like, that is something, and like you said, and yet he was still able to find a way, like at all these spots, to have success, even with, that there were numerous changes. Because what he took over at Texas Tech in 2000, and you think about that 22-year journey through to Mississippi State, basically. And it's like, think about all the changes that took place just in the game itself through there, and yet he was still able to, again, do it his way. And he found a way again to make it work. So yeah, I mean, there's like we said, there's so many other things I'm sure that will pop into our minds, and there's so many things that will be shared. Um, I know I'd been wanting to do it for a while, and obviously hate that I just kind of remembered to do it now under the circumstance. But he had that book that he put out. I would say it's probably almost a decade ago now, I'd say. It was the Swing Your Sword book he
Yeah.
did with Bruce Feldman. And I never read it, but like, that was just one that was kind of always on my list. I was like, I need to read this, because you just know, like, yes, someone else is helping write it, but like, what you're going to get in that. So I'm sure there's people that are watching this that have read that book, and I'm sure that you can get it on Kindle or something like that. But um, yeah, like, it was such a unique, like I said, it's such a unique mind. And I think there's just so many things as always, you wish you just could have, had a chance to experience more of it, in terms of just kind of everything that he brought to the table. And so, yeah, it's, again, I know we've just been talking for 20 minutes, but it's like, there's still so many more things that I'm sure
Oh, yeah.
that will pop into people's minds that, they'll kind of look back and remember him on for. So,
Well, this is also not something that happens a lot. You don't see a lot of coaches pass while they're still coaching, much less in season. That's a rare thing. I'm trying to think of the last time I remember that happening at a Power Five school, maybe Randy Walker at Northwestern. And I think that happened before the season. So that's not something that we deal with a lot. I'm trying to think of outside that. I think, and you would know this better than I would know. I think Texas San Antonio lost a basketball coach midseason a few years ago.
yeah, Lou Hill.
Uh, yeah, UT Martin lost a coach right before its season in basketball a couple years back. Anthony Stewart, who I knew and really liked Anthony too. He was a guy. I'm not going to say he was Mike Leach, because he wasn't. Their personalities were opposite. Anthony was a very business-like guy, but he had come to coaching with the business background. He was not an insider, and had done some nice things there, and had coached his son. And that's one of those things, like when you coach one of these, like I'd interviewed Anthony Stewart a couple months before he passed, doing some work for Blue Ribbon College Hoops, and just like, wow, I just talked to you yesterday, it seems like. It's just really a shock when you see a coach taken in the middle of the season, in the middle of a career, and it's not something we're used to dealing with. I don't know that there's a blueprint for this, even if it were a frequent occurrence, but certainly just weird territory for Mississippi State to be in. And let's not forget, this is a team that lost a walk on. I think to a tragic occurrence. What was it in the middle of the season too? So this is a community that's been touched by a lot of grief and sadness this year, and that's always hard. But it's particularly hard at a time of the year where we're not too far from Christmas.
Yep, and just look at that. Yes, obviously thoughts are with his family and friends and everyone that knew him, but like that player coach bond is something that
Yeah.
I think especially at the college level where it's you've got guys who are getting ready to go off and move into a different area of their life. That's it's been all school for however many years, and then you're thrown into the real world, I guess you could say. But like again, I think coaches at that level, especially at the highest level, and again, think about all the things that, especially as an SEC football player, you have to navigate. And I just think that bond with all your coaches is just something that I don't know. It's just there's so many things like that you think about with the players too, and I'm sure that bond they had, so many of them just again, knowing that, especially with a coach like that just was you were going to get kind of the straightforward thought on probably where you stood with him, and again, just I'm sure there were so many unique relationships too with him and his players, and I'm sure again we'll hear a lot about those as well. But yeah, just boy, just yeah, a tragic loss and someone who, like I said, just truly one of a kind, but also I think the impact he had on the game itself cannot be understated because of just again the innovation and everything that you think about kind of just this age of football and kind of how it's played. I mean, he was a big part of that. So
Mike Leach dead at the age of 61. Um, our thoughts and prayers to Mike Leach's family, to his team, to the Mississippi State community, and anyone who was touched by the great life of Mike Leach. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14, and thanks for watching.